side of the Ada Lewis Middle School, the old school in East Germantown. As you can see, cops are here. You can see behind me over there, there are officers are back on the scene here. This is where they searched earlier this week for any signs of Kada Scott. Police sources now telling me that they have confirmed that human remains of a female have now been found way back in the wooded area behind the school. They tell me that the remains have been there for a week.
When was it? This isn't like her. She's never left home before?
No, not like this. Her phone been off since Saturday, well, to my life since Sunday morning, and it's going completely right straight to voicemail. So it hasn't been on since Sunday morning that I know of.
What do you think's going on?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm hoping for the best.
October 4th, 2025. 23-year-old Kada Scott vanishes into the Philadelphia night. For 15 agonizing days, her family searched, posted flyers, prayed for a miracle. Then came the call that shattered everything, an anonymous tip directing police to an abandoned middle school in Germantown. Behind its decaying walls, in a densely wooded area where few would venture, investigators began to dig. What they unearthed from a shallow grave wasn't just a body. It was evidence of a brutal execution, a gunshot to the head. And when they arrested the suspect, they discovered something even more terrifying. He had done this before. He had been caught. He had been charged. And the system had let him walk free. Before we dive into this case, if you're new to Crime Mystica, please hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss an update on important cases like these. These stories matter, and staying informed helps us all stay safer out there. Let's look out for one another, and remember, your safety comes first, always. Kada Scott was just 23 years old, a young woman living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with her whole life stretching out before her. She had family who loved her, friends who cared about her, and a routine that kept her grounded. Every day, she went to work like millions of other Americans, just trying to live her life in peace. October 4th, 2025 was supposed to be just another night. Kada's mother saw her before she left for work that evening. It would be the last time she ever saw her daughter alive. Kada arrived at the facility that night, ready to start her shift. But something happened. Something that made Kada leave before her shift even really began. At approximately 9:45 in the evening, just 15 minutes before she was supposed to clock in, Kada walked away from that facility and vanished. Here's what makes this even more disturbing. Kada hadn't just been living her normal life in the days leading up to her disappearance. She had been receiving harassing phone calls. She told friends about it. Someone had been bothering her, contacting her, making her uncomfortable. And on that night of October 4th, right before she disappeared completely, someone was in contact with Kada. Her phone would go dark. Her social media would go silent. Every trace of her online presence would vanish. And Kada Scott would never be seen alive again. When Kada didn't come home that night, her family knew something was wrong. This wasn't like her. She wasn't the type to just disappear without warning, to leave her loved ones panicking and searching for answers. The hours crawled by with no word from Kada. Then those hours turned into days. Missing person reports were filed with the Philadelphia Police Department. Flyers with Kada's face started appearing throughout the city. Her family and friends plastered them on poles, handed them out to strangers, posted them in store windows, anywhere someone might see them, and remember something, anything that could bring Kada home. Social media exploded with her picture. People shared her information across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The Philadelphia community rallied together, spreading the word, organizing searches, doing everything possible to find this young woman. But as the days stretched on, hope began to crack. One day became two became three. Then a week passed. Still nothing. No phone calls, no sightings, no leads that brought investigators any closer to finding Kada Scott. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air that October night. The Scott family lived in agony. Every ring of the phone could be the call they were praying for. Every knock on the door could be Kada coming home. But the calls that came brought no good news. The door remained closed and Kada remained missing. 15 days. That's how long her family waited, hoped, and suffered through the unknown. 15 days of not knowing if she was hurt somewhere, if she was being held against her will, if she was still alive. 15 days of a nightmare that no family should ever have to endure. October 19th, 2025, day 15. The Philadelphia Police Department received a phone call that would change everything. It was an anonymous tip, but this wasn't some vague hunch or uncertain suspicion. According to investigators, this tip was very specific. Whoever was on the other end of that phone line knew exactly where to tell police to look. They directed officers to a particular location in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, the area behind Ada H. Lewis Middle School. Now, this wasn't just any middle school. Ada H. Lewis had been abandoned. The building stood empty, forgotten, the kind of place people avoid. Behind it stretched a densely wooded area, thick with trees and undergrowth, isolated and hidden from view. It wasn't somewhere you'd stumble upon by accident. It wasn't a place where people walked their dogs or took casual strolls. This was the kind of location someone would choose if they wanted to hide something or someone. Philadelphia police officers arrived at the location and began their search. They pushed through the dense vegetation behind that abandoned school, looking for what the anonymous caller told them they'd find. And then they saw it. Disturbed earth, fresh digging, a shallow grave carved into the ground, covered with dirt and debris in what looked like a rushed attempt to conceal it. The officers began to carefully excavate the site, and what they found confirmed every horrible fear that had been building for 15 days. There were human remains buried in that shallow grave, but finding remains was only the beginning. The authorities needed confirmation. They needed to know for certain whose body lay in that cold earth behind an abandoned school. The remains were transported to the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office for analysis and identification. For 2 more days, the Scott family waited. 2 more days of not knowing for sure, even though deep down they probably already knew the truth. 2 more days of holding on to that last thread of hope that maybe, somehow, it wasn't their Kada. October 21st, 2025. The DNA results came back. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office confirmed what everyone had feared. The remains found in that shallow grave were positively identified as Kada Scott. She had been found, but not the way anyone wanted. Not alive, not safe, not coming home to her family. The young woman who had walked out of work 15 days earlier, the woman whose face had been plastered on missing person flyers all over Philadelphia, had been lying in the woods behind an abandoned school the entire time. The medical examiner's report revealed how Kada had lost her life. She had suffered a gunshot wound to her head. The manner of her passing was officially ruled a homicide. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some tragic misunderstanding. Someone had deliberately taken Kada's life, and then that same person or persons had driven her body to that isolated location, dug that shallow grave, and tried to hide what they had done. But they hadn't counted on one thing: that anonymous phone call, that very specific tip that led police right to where Kada had been buried. With Kada's identity confirmed and the cause of her passing established, this case transformed from a missing person investigation into a full homicide investigation. Philadelphia police detectives went to work, and they had something crucial to work with: surveillance footage. Investigators obtained video from the area around where Kada's body was discovered. What that footage showed was chilling. The timestamp read approximately 4 o'clock in the morning. In the grainy footage, 2 figures could be seen moving in the darkness. They were removing something heavy from a vehicle, something that required both of them to carry it. According to investigators, the object was consistent with the size and weight of a human body. The video captured these 2 people struggling with this heavy burden, carrying it from the car toward the wooded area behind the abandoned school, the exact spot where Kada's remains would be found. Think about that for a moment. 2 people working together in the early morning hours when the world was asleep, carrying what appeared to be a body to a pre-selected burial site. This wasn't a crime of passion that spiraled out of control. This was calculated. This was deliberate. This was 2 people making a conscious decision to dispose of Kada's body and cover up what had happened to her. That video evidence was a game changer. It proved that at least 2 people were involved in disposing of Kada's remains. It gave investigators a timeline, around 4 in the morning, and it provided visual evidence that could help identify the suspects. The detectives now had something concrete to work with, and they began piecing together the puzzle of what happened to Kada Scott. The investigation led them to a 21-year-old man named Keon King. And when police arrested him, they didn't just charge him with one crime. The list of charges against King was extensive, and each one tells part of the story of what happened to Kada. The primary charge was the most serious, the charge directly related to Kada's passing. But prosecutors also hit him with illegal possession of a firearm, abuse of a corpse, robbery, theft, tampering with evidence, arson, and conspiracy. Let's break down what these charges mean. The illegal gun possession charge relates to the weapon allegedly used to end Kada's life. The abuse of corpse charge is about the burial, about what was done to Kada's body after she had already passed. The robbery and theft charges suggest that something was taken from Kada, her belongings, her property, maybe even her phone. The tampering with evidence charge means King allegedly tried to cover his tracks, to hide what he had done. And that arson charge, that suggests something was burned, maybe clothes, maybe evidence, maybe something that could have tied him to the crime. But it's that conspiracy charge that really stands out. Because conspiracy means you didn't act alone. It means there was a plan, an agreement between multiple people to commit a crime. And that lines up perfectly with what the surveillance video showed, 2 people carrying what appeared to be Kada's body to that burial site. King had help. Someone else was involved in this. Someone else knew what happened to Kada and helped dispose of her body. When King was brought before the court, the judge set his bail at $2.5 million. That's not a number you see every day. That's the kind of bail reserved for the most serious charges, for people the court believes are a danger to the community. King couldn't post that bail. He remained locked up, held in custody while the legal process moved forward. His preliminary hearing was scheduled for November 2025, and the case would make its way through the Philadelphia court system. But here's where this case goes from tragic to absolutely infuriating. As investigators dug into Keon King's background, they uncovered something that should make everyone's blood run cold. This wasn't King's first time being accused of violence against a woman. Not even close. Earlier in 2025, just months before Kada Scott disappeared, Keon King had been arrested and charged with another serious crime involving a female victim. In that earlier case, King was accused of forcibly taking and strangling a woman he knew. Read that again. Forcibly taking and strangling. These weren't minor charges. This was violent. This was dangerous. This was the kind of behaviour that screams warning signs in bright red letters. The kind of case that should have kept him off the streets, that should have resulted in consequences severe enough to prevent him from ever having the opportunity to harm another woman. But the system failed. That case against Keon King was dismissed, and the reason? The witness didn't show up to court. When the victim or witness in a case doesn't appear to testify, prosecutors often have no choice but to drop the charges. Maybe the witness was scared, maybe she had been threatened, maybe she just couldn't face the trauma of testifying and reliving what happened to her. We don't know. But what we do know is the result. Keon King walked free. So let's put this timeline together. King is accused of violent crimes against a woman. The case gets dismissed. He's back on the streets with no consequences, no intervention, no accountability. And then, just months later, Kada Scott vanishes from her workplace. 15 days after that, she's found buried in a shallow grave with a gunshot wound to her head, and Keon King is the one arrested and charged. This is the question that haunts this entire case. Could Kada Scott's life have been saved if that earlier case hadn't been dismissed? If Keon King had faced real consequences for his alleged violence, would he have been free to harm Kada? This pattern of violence against women, this escalation from one victim to another, represents one of the most disturbing aspects of this tragedy. It's not just about what happened to Kada. It's about a system that failed to stop someone with a documented history of hurting women before he could do something even worse. But Keon King isn't the only person investigators are looking for. Remember that surveillance footage? Two people, two figures in the darkness at 4 a.m. carrying what appeared to be Kada's body. The conspiracy charge against King confirms what the video already showed. He didn't act alone. Someone else was there. Someone else helped move Kada's body to that burial site. Someone else helped dig that shallow grave. Someone else helped cover up what happened to her. Philadelphia police detectives have made it clear they believe at least one other person assisted King in moving and burying Kada's remains. They're actively working to identify everyone who was involved in this crime. And that raises so many questions. Who was the second person in that video? Was it someone King knew well, a friend, a family member, someone who owed him a favor? Or was it someone who was there that night when Kada lost her life and felt they had no choice but to help cover it up? And here's another mystery that still haunts this case. Who made that anonymous phone call? Who knew exactly where Kada's body was buried and decided to tell police? Was it the second person from the video, someone who couldn't live with the guilt anymore? Was it someone who overheard King talking about what he had done? Was it someone who saw something suspicious that night and put the pieces together? Whoever it was, they gave Kada's family answers. They moved this case from an unsolved disappearance to a homicide investigation with a suspect in custody. The investigation is still active, still ongoing. Detectives are following leads, analysing phone records, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together every detail of what happened to Kada Scott. They're looking at King's movements in the days after October 4th. They're examining his connections, his associates, anyone who might have known what he did or helped him do it. Because every person who was involved, every person who knew and stayed silent while Kada's family searched desperately for her, every person who helped hide what happened to this young woman, they all need to be held accountable. As of today, Keon King remains behind bars, held on that $2.5 million bail at a Philadelphia detention facility. He's waiting for his preliminary hearing scheduled for November. The legal process is moving forward and prosecutors are building their case. They have the surveillance footage showing two people disposing of what appears to be a body. They have the forensic evidence from the burial site. They have the medical examiner's findings confirming Kada was shot in the head. They have whatever evidence led them to charge King with arson, suggesting something was burned to destroy evidence. They likely have phone records, digital evidence, witness statements, all the pieces needed to prove King's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. For Kada's family, none of this brings her back. The arrests, the charges, the legal proceedings, they're necessary steps toward justice, but they don't undo the pain. They don't fill the emptiness left by a 23-year-old woman who should still be here, who should be living her life, pursuing her dreams, spending time with the people who loved her. Instead, her family is left to grieve and to wait for a justice system that already failed them once to somehow get it right this time. If this case has affected you, please take a moment to like this video and share it so Kada's story reaches more people. Subscribe to Crime Mystica for respectful, fact-based coverage of cases that demand our attention. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss any updates on this case or others like it. Stay aware of your surroundings. Trust your instincts. Look out for one another. If someone is making you uncomfortable, tell people. If you see something that doesn't seem right, speak up. Your voice could save a life. And most importantly, remember Kada Scott. Remember that she was 23 years old. Remember that she had a family who loved her. Remember that she worked overnight shifts caring for people who needed her. Remember that she deserved to live a long, full life. Remember that her story isn't just about what was done to her. It's about who she was. Justice for Kada Scott. Stay safe out there.